Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula here.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Jonny Tsunami spinning on the ones and twos. Fam, where's your glasses?
Probably upstairs. Oh, well, that's fine.
Really? Okay, so I'm going to have to read everything today. Guys, if I stutter, if I fall, please pick me up. Help me out. Got a great show for you today.
Dramatic.
Bam, we have a great show because on Friday, we didn't even have enough space to fit some of this stuff in. In fact, the first two subjects were things I wanted to talk about on Friday, but we had a loaded show already.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about them today. Trey Wright was the first one in the door, of course, behind Ricky Rance, who said we're fam.
Fam.
What's up, Ricky Rance? What's up, Trey Wright? He says, love you all. Elon isn't person of the year in my eyes. You guys are. Trey, you're our person of the year over here. We love you.
What kind of fucked up world do we live in where Elon Musk is person of... I mean, I want off this ride. I really do. I really do.
Everybody give Pasta a hug, says Shadowban Refugee. Oh, Paulie, thank you so much. Karen M., Joe Hinter, Steve Cutler Live, Cam Schwari, Kate, Popeye Sailor, David Crow.
What's up,
Jilly
Crow?
Love, Frederick Murphy, Cadillac Centaur, all hanging out.
Hey, Johnny's been
On
drinking the
YouTube.
fine Mexican lagers lately.
Fine Mexican lagers. What's up, Elizabeth? Hope you're doing well. We have a lot of great people over here. Vegan Succubus.
That is Elizabeth. No, outside on the kitchen.
I was keeping that secret. Malik Carey, thank you. Hello, Boomer. Joe Hillner,
You
Josh
did not just call
Kunor.
me a boomer.
You just
boomer.
you just had a boomer moment.
No.
Yes, you did.
No.
Yes, you
No.
did. Boomer moment. Guys, listen, do us a favor. Like, share, subscribe, all that things right now. Getting mad suppressed.
Yeah, people don't get our
bells and
notifications
things,
and
whatnot.
all those.
But even those who do show up, we appreciate you. We don't
Yes.
need everybody. We just need the ones we love. And the ones we love always seem to show up. Thank you so much. By the way, Paulie, amazing work. Great articles, writing about a lot of stuff when it comes to what was going on with that infrastructure bill, which was a bunch of Fugazi shit or Fugazi shit, depending on what part of the East Village you're from. But yes, it was a crock of shit. And Paulie did a great job exposing that. Had a great show with Jack on Franco's show talking about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, that whole 9 yards. A lot of stuff's coming into fruition. A lot of people are talking about it now, fam. We talked about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies on Friday because now Congress is starting to really put the pressure on. You got people who are against it, people who are now jumping on the boat for it, fam, to get votes. People like your boy, Senator Cruz over there in Tejas, is now all of a sudden a Bitcoin advocate.
Ted.
Yeah. Ted from Tejas. And it's kind of crazy because it is very interesting because right now it is a threat to our financial system. And that's something that's really, really, really important to pay attention to right now, fam. No?
I don't know if it's a threat. I mean, I guess it could be a threat, but it's more of like a short-term solution for a lot of people in like sanctioned countries and poor people and, and censored journalists of the sort. So, yeah.
Yeah. At one point, the only way for Julian to receive finances were through
Right.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, so you
'cause-
shouldn't go after him for that because, Anyway, so I'm not getting into that. We have a loaded folder.
Yes,
we have
we
like
do.
6 sections. So let's
Fam, the
let's
folder
get to...
is loaded. Guys, if you haven't
start.
gone over to Slow News Day is hanging on out on the Rokfin.
Steve, Slow News Day.
SSJ
You guys
for
might want to
Curtis.
check out Union of the Unwanted later. There'll be amazing people on tonight.
A
just
dingo ate me,
promoting that.
baby. Yeah, tell them to call me up. I want to get on that panel and have fun with you guys. So let me know. Love to do that.
So really quick, we're going to talk about Julian. We're going to talk about, we have Addy Adds coming on to talk
Addy
about
Adds.
Ghislaine Maxwell at 1:30. He'll be here. And then we have, I'm going to talk about the Hassan Piker comment because we never talk about that idiot. But the reason we're going to talk about it is because in the context of really what happened to Julian and how he suffered a stroke. And we're going to be talking even more about Julian because everybody has to amp it up right now. Like what's happening right now, it's literally affecting all of us. I mean, we can't even talk. We're going to talk about that on Rokfin, but we can't say certain things on Twitter that are actually based in science because you're going to get your account taken down. So anyway.
Yeah. Speaking of, we just reposted up the Dr. McCullough video. He talked about Union of the Wanted. That was the Twitter I got taken down for the 5 principles. So remember, they are suppressing our voices. So now we dive right into it?
Yeah, so this is you.
Yes,
I
okay.
mean,
Well, it's us.
Well, yes, but I did a little thing on this, the Biden summit and the farce it was on RT Crosstalk And everybody basically agreed, like, this is just an attempt to pretty much cement the same interventionist foreign policy, and sort of have a push for a proxy war with Russia, a new Cold War, so to speak. It never really died, but via Ukraine, right? And of course, we've been covering Ukraine for a while,
yeah.
And the neo-Nazis that we backed in 2014. And so, you know, the whole thing was basically anti-China, anti-Russia. They invited Juan Guaido as one of the guest speakers. So,
yeah. So getting back to like the whole Putin talking to Biden summit, you know, it was a lot about Ukraine right now. You know, ever since the Biden administration has taken over, we've seen this push once again against Russia. All the players that were in before, fam, when it came to Ukraine, when it came to the Orange Revolution or whatever you called it, whatnot, the West led regime change. All those people are back in. The Victoria Nuland now, that was who gave the attaboy thumbs up with Joe Biden. These are the people who created the conditions in Ukraine, which have made it one of the poorest countries now on the fucking planet. People are starving. There's a mini civil war going in the eastern part of the country when it comes to the Donbass region, which are historically Russian ethnic speaking people. Well, once Biden got in, there was some more jockeying. All of a sudden, we saw Ukraine send their troops now closer to the border, over on the Russian side, the eastern part of Ukraine. We threatened with putting ships in the Black Sea. So I was saying, what was this meeting really about, and what changes are coming out of it? And since they've been in crisis, the Zelensky government is trying to hold on. The country's about to fall completely. They have the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that's coming. That's going to crush them economically. They're not going to be allowed in NATO. Russia said that's a red line. If you ask Ukraine to be in NATO, we're not going to do it. They're even talking about getting Bitcoin, adopting that kind of stuff like that. So they're really in a crisis. So let's just get a little breakdown of the meeting. RT had a little 3-minute video on what was going on, and then we'll kind of piggyback on that so you can understand exactly the situation that's happening when it comes to Ukraine and Russia.
As rumors of a possible war between Russia and Ukraine continue in the mainstream media, Russian President Vladimir Putin and his U.S. President Joe Biden held a video conference today to address that and other issues that concern the two superpowers. RT's Alex Mihailovich has the story.
It was a highly anticipated conversation between two of the most powerful men in the world. As many expected, Ukraine was at the top of the agenda.
We will have an important event in relations, a phone and video contact between Presidents Putin and Biden. Unconditionally, we will clearly outline our approaches regarding the Ukrainian settlement. We will speak about the necessity of the Ukrainian regime to fulfill clearly defined commitments within the Minsk package of measures. Apparently, Kiev will not listen to anybody but the United States.
The more than 2-hour-long online conversation between U.S. President Joe Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin was mostly held behind closed doors. From what we know of the discussion, Washington and Moscow see the Ukraine issue from very different points of view. Since the end of the Cold War, Russia has watched NATO expand to its borders. For Russian President Vladimir Putin, the idea of Ukraine becoming a NATO member state or the deployment of NATO troops in Ukraine are examples of the West crossing a red line, something that President Joe Biden addressed just days ago in a blunt fashion.
Do you accept Putin's red line on Ukraine? I don't accept anybody's red line.
Today's video conference began with a friendlier tone, with the leaders greeting each other.
Good to see you again.
And President Biden expressing his hope for an in-person meeting with President Putin in the future. Russian troop movements on its territories near Ukraine were discussed, with Biden likely viewing Russia's activity as aggressive, while Putin likely seeing it as Russia being completely within its rights, especially since there has been a large-scale Ukrainian troop buildup in the area, as well as the fact that there have been reports that up to 4,000 U.S. troops and 8,000 NATO troops could already be on the ground in Ukraine. President Putin wants guarantees from the U.S. that NATO and its member states, like the United States, will not continue their push eastward towards Russia's borders, including putting NATO troops in neighboring Ukraine. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan spoke to the media following the talks between Biden and Putin.
President Biden was direct and straightforward with President Putin, as he always is. He reiterated America's support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. He told President Putin directly that if Russia further invades Ukraine, the United States and our European allies would respond with strong economic measures. We would provide additional defensive materiel to the Ukrainians above and beyond that which we are already providing.
As an alternative, Biden.
So, fam, I think you hit it on the nose when you said it the other day. This is a buildup of another actual Cold War. This is for the military-industrial complex and NATO to spend more money, takes more of our tax dollars, load up, sell them weapons, whatnot, and just, continue to do what they've always been doing. It's just creating boogeymans, creating problems. Russia doesn't have the right to move troops within their own country after, NATO comes in there and the United States comes in there and starts selling Ukraine weapons.
Right. So the whole time during the summit, they were saying, and if you go to CNN, if you go to mainstream media, they're like, oh, the Russians are moving their troops, so Biden is going to respond and just have this response because Russia is being extremely aggressive, when in reality, it's the U.S. and their NATO allies that are moving in an area that they shouldn't be in. They have no jurisdiction in. And it's the same thing with, you talk about China, Taiwan. It's the same thing. They frame it in the sense of, oh, the Chinese are putting their ships there. We have set our own ships and military to the South China Sea. It's the same exact thing. But, of course, they frame it in that way. And, of course, General Lloyd Austin, who is Secretary of Defense, was also saying that they're ready to push back if Russia continues behaving in the aggressive, offensive manner that they're behaving. So this is the rhetoric that they're using.
Yeah. And at the same time, he wouldn't commit to troops on the ground. But the fact that they're talking about troops on the ground is crazy. And you're right. You hit it on the nose. A lot of people who are saying, oh, Taiwan's going to go to war with China. It's like, what do you mean? China's going to go to war with itself?
Right.
It's like, give me a break. You know what I'm saying? And once again, Ukraine was part of, Soviet Union. Khrushchev gave it on over. But there are a lot of ethnic people speaking, Russian-speaking people in eastern Ukraine. And so, I put this up right here. This was about a month ago. This is November 11th. It says Russia warns about arms sales to Ukraine.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? They saw it right off the bat. Like, okay, here we go. A newly announced deal that could see Washington supply Ukraine with deadly weapons could further inflame the country's bloody civil conflict and make a lasting peace agreement harder. Russia's ambassador to the U.S. has cautioned. In a statement issued on Thursday, Anatoly Antonov said that the strategic partnership document signed by the American and Ukrainian diplomats was merely a set of slogans, harmful ones, according to him, and almost every line there is of a geopolitical tool to oppose Russia. Antonov went on to say the plans to supply weapons to the regime in Kiev will only worsen the situation in southeastern Ukraine. We believe that another opportunity to encourage Kiev to stop the war has been missed. So, fam, they spotted this out. This was like about a month ago, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny because after Ukraine was asking for weapons, they meant to fight the Taliban now on their border. And those were weapons that were going to go to the Afghan government. The military-industrial complex has to find a customer, fam. They have to find somebody to sell their weapons to. So here we are. We see Ukraine ask for weapons meant to fight Taliban. And that was in early December, like a week ago, not a couple days ago as well. So that is what's going on. They're just amping up war. They're trying to create a phony kind of boogeyman. And that's that. So do you have anything to say about that before we talk about the way the Western media kind of presented this whole thing?
No. I mean, I think that's the most important part of this, because you can talk about the specifics of what's happening there, but at the end of the day, nothing that we're really learning is just really showing that Russia is on the offensive. It's the United States that is once again attempting to meddle. And, we recognize the backing of the actual neo-Nazis a while ago, and people only started talking about it when it was Joe Biden was in the running for the presidency, is when people finally started talking about it. That happened all the way in 2014.
Yeah. And those people, the Azov Battalion, are still in charge there. They still have their minions within the Congress, I should say, or the of Kiev. And that's the funny thing right now. When we talk a lot about Zelensky is the president of Ukraine. A lot of people have a lot of different opinions about him. A lot of people feel that he's kind of like being anti-Russia, whatnot. A lot of people think he's a puppet and that he goes along with the West. I mean, I think that's a guy who got a job, probably, who didn't know how bad it was and how hard it was to run that country, because it's run by mainly oligarchs, and then you have all these other factions pulling on it. And now you have people in poverty We once played a video when Zelensky was going towards the line of Donbass in the area, and he was trying to tell his own troops to back off to get back, and they were like, fuck you, we're not going to do anything. They weren't listening to him. So he's really caught in this crazy position. Who knows what's going to happen next, because you know, once the Nord Stream 2 pipeline goes through, they're already one of the most poorest countries. Now it's going to be another level, another blow to them, because now they don't even get the money for the shipment of gas across and everything across the lines and whatnot. So it's just one of those crazy situations and something we have to look at. So one of the reasons I think they wanted to also have this summit too is they wanted to be able to have Joe Biden puff his chest up, fam.
Yeah, but
I'm not
nobody's
like
buying it.
Donald Trump, where I work for the Russians. I let Vladimir Putin let him know that I have a line and he better not cross my shit line. So let's take a look at some of the headlines. I just grabbed all these headlines. These are great. Ready, Johnny? So Biden warns Putin, Russia will pay a terrible price if it invades Ukraine. They're not going to invade Ukraine. They never want to invade Ukraine. They don't want to deal with Ukraine. That's another. If they have to take over Ukraine, they have to take over an impoverished country, and it goes on their backs. They don't want to do that. Believe you me, they don't want to take Ukraine. They don't want it at all. But they sure as hell don't want NATO there.
Right.
Biden delivers a warning to Putin over Ukraine. Biden didn't accept Putin's red lines on Ukraine. Here's what that means. Biden expressed deep concerns to Putin over Ukraine, White House says. These are all freaking the mainstream media. History shows that Biden is handling Putin the right way, fam. Unlike Donald, who handled him the wrong way. There he is,
Donald
with
was
Zelensky.
more aggressive.
Well,
But
the
they're
whole
making it out to be like Biden's some sort of like just maverick, like fighting Putin, Captain America, fighting the
Yeah.
you know. But that's all it is. I mean, that's all propaganda. That's why you can't tell which mainstream media outlet is saying it, because they all sound exactly the same.
Yes, and now we get to the point. So we know the mainstream media. We know at the White House how they acted. You saw Jake Sullivan. You heard about Victoria Nuland going over there trying to make demands. Anthony Blinken, you know what I'm saying? It's the same. It's the band got back together. The pause when Donald Trump was there, whatnot. Not to say that Trump was great, but I think Trump wanted to find out more about the lines to Russiagate. So therefore, in Ukraine, he didn't push the boundaries. As with this administration, they're going in and they're pushing the boundaries. Let's go to the Black Sea. Let's push it to the borders. Well, no, he was really just trying to find out more was what. He wasn't really pushing buttons there. And Ukraine was in a transitional period at that time, trying to figure out what
Maybe
was
not
what.
with Ukraine, but with other.
Well, of
parts
course, with other
Russia, he
countries,
was-
yes. But still, I mean, the fact that Donald Trump let a treaty expire with Russia that allowed weapons, nuclear weapons, to go on vessels, on ships, on planes, whatnot, was very, very scary. Now we have Senator Wicker, who's the number 2 ranking member on the Arms Committee, fam. Watch what this guy's saying, and it is just beyond fucking scary, and it's very upsetting that nobody in the mainstream media, nobody in Congress says anything to combat these words. This guy is not talking about nuclear war. He's talking about nuclear holocaust. Listen to this.
Well, military action could mean that we stand off with our ships in the Black Sea and we rain destruction on Russian military capability. It could mean that. It could mean that we participate, and I would not rule that out. I would not rule out American troops on the ground. We don't rule out first use nuclear action. Well, military action.
I mean, he just said we don't rule out first use nuclear action. First, I mean, the fact that nobody's saying anything about this right here, this is just like mind-boggling. This guy's talking about World War III here, fam. Mm-hmm. You think that Russia, who has more nuclear weapons than us, is going to let us drop a nuclear bomb on them and not do anything? Anything to say to that, because I do want to show Tulsi, because Tulsi was one of the persons, and this is what Shauna Burley put up. I thought I'd surely see Dems like AOC, Senator Sanders, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Pramila, joining fellow Dem Tulsi Gabbard in condemning Senator Wicker, but only found high school drama with Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I guess there's only one progressives. So here's Tulsi going on, I believe it was Tucker, and she's speaking her mind of what happened. And somebody needs to say this stuff, because this is important. This is the doomsday clock. This is nuclear holocaust. Take a look.
Anyone who would propose or even consider what he is saying as an option must be insane, a sociopath, or a sadist. Because let's just understand here. So he's saying, let's go and launch a nuclear attack that would start a war that would destroy the American people, our country, and the world, and also the Ukrainians, so that we can save Ukraine's democracy. I mean, it literally is insane. And the crazy thing, Tucker, is Senator Wicker is not an outlier. He's the #2 Republican on the Armed Services Committee, and you're hearing the same kind of rhetoric coming from Democrats and Republicans in Congress, in the administration, and in the media, who have no problem with this because they actually agree with it. They're pushing this same narrative themselves, and this is why it is such a dangerous situation that we are facing as we are being pushed closer and closer very quickly, as you said, to a hot war, a nuclear war that would destroy the world as we know it.
So, ma'am, we're going to play a clip from Mike Gravel before, because Mike Gravel called out the Democrats at the time that were running. It was Hillary, Barack, Joe Biden back then and whatnot. You know, what we have in our submarines alone will destroy the planet 17 times over. What we have in the water. So that can just tell you, like, the dangerousness of this, and the fact that we talk about the doomsday clock. Nobody pays attention to this. This is something that used to be paid attention to when I was first growing up. Remember, we had the duck and cover, where you think you have to get underneath your chair because a nuclear bomb was coming, which was ridiculous and stuff. But it's not talked about today. Nobody even is concerned about it. And this is something that's very, very serious. Nothing?
Yeah. No, right. I mean, it is. I just... It's not news to me. It shouldn't be news to any of you that the Democrats and the Republicans are together when it comes to war. Yeah. And there's only a few outliers in Congress. Tulsi's not in Congress anymore, so sure. I mean, there's really not much besides, you know, punditry to what she says anymore because she's not in Congress. So it's kind of like, yeah, like that's what we have. That's why you can't, you know, just say that electoralism is going to save us, that, you know, we just got to sit back and elect more progressives when the people that are deemed progressives are just as hawkish as the moderates, either from fear of losing their positions or because they are equally as imperialist.
If I was in Congress, I would have called a press conference right away, immediately, to condemn those words and say this is ridiculous. This is absolutely lunacy that we are talking about first strike nuclear capabilities when it comes to the United States. That's nuts. Here's Gravel, and Johnny, we won't play it all the way through. We'll play about 1:40 through, because you got to see the juiciness of Mike Gravel when he was calling out these people talking about using codes for using nukes in these wars.
Some of these people frighten me. They frighten me. You're right, I made that statement, but that's before I had a chance to stand with them three times. It's like going into the Senate. You know, the first time you get there, you're all excited. My God, how did I ever get here? Then about 6 months later, you say, how the hell did the rest of them get here? And I got to tell you, after standing up with them, some of these people frighten me. They frighten me. When you have mainline candidates that turn around and say that there's nothing off the table with respect to Iran, that's code for using nukes, nuclear devices. I got to tell you, I'm President of the United States. There will be no preemptive wars with nuclear devices. To my mind, it's immoral, and it's been immoral for the last 50 years as part of American foreign policy.
Let's use a little moderator to...
Some more. He further went after them some more, too, as well. Joe Biden raised his hand. They were, like, laughing at it, fam.
Yeah.
Both Clinton, Obama, and Biden.
This is a famous clip. Like, I think a lot of people have seen already. They push out people like Gravel. They push out anybody that's remotely an anti-imperialist, or they smear them as anti-Semites, like they did to Cynthia McKinney. Yeah. So, and so just on this whole topic, you know how the Democrats are talking about a democracy summit. In LA County, these, you know, people that are part of the Democratic Party, but only because they want to, like, be a thorn on their side, pretty much always protesting them, went out and protested outside the USS Iowa battleship, where the LA County Dems were having a Christmas party, obviously tone deaf, when the people in LA are suffering economically. These Dems continue, of course, pushing imperialist propaganda, while the U.S. just won an appeal to extradite Julian Assange, who exposed their war crimes. So they're having this protest right outside, and I'm just going to talk through it. They're having this protest right outside, and there's Glory Jones from Slow News Day yelling, "Free Julian Assange." And you know, she doesn't even need the megaphone, but she was out there. And just so you guys know, there was an attempt by Melissa Michelson, who's a delegate, to introduce legislation for the Democratic Party to say free Julian Assange. They rejected it. They rejected it completely. You know, they would say comments like he's a rapist or he helped Trump win, and oh, you know, they're still on those smears. And so they were kind of like alluding, you know, tying, you know, the fact that the Dems are still pushing imperialist propaganda. They're having a Christmas party on a ship that is like an actual tool of our imperialism, and they don't, you know, mention or even acknowledge Assange. They're also, of course, as we know, beholden to corporations. And in LA, there's a huge situation going on with the privatization of water. That's been going on forever. You can watch the movie Chinatown, and that really deals with all of that. But now it's 10,000 times worse. They're basically making legislation that will privatize all of the water in Los Angeles. And so my whole thing is, you know, while these people are still yelling at the Democrats, I am at the point where, you know, we had, there was an activist from Code Pink who, Rachel Brunke, who is always, you know, an anti-war activist. And she's part of the Green Party, but, you know, she was like, you know, for years we've been fighting Dems and they haven't budged. So, you know, Gloria Jones made a nice speech where she was like, this isn't about the Democrats and Republicans. This is about, you know, the not just the military industrial complex, but the national security state apparatus and like all of their cohorts, their media propaganda arm. And, you know, and you know, it's just very obvious to me that people are waking up, but I mean, it needs to happen a lot quicker. The cops obviously came right immediately as that was happening. So
I'm sure they did. And how brain dead do you have to be that you're having a Christmas party on top of an Iowa-class battleship? Look at those guns over there. Those guns alone will freaking just obliterate people. This is a war machine over here, and you're supposed to be the party of peace. Get the hell out of here. They officially, I think they're across the board. I mean, it's been a long time for us. We've understood how the Democratic Party has a bunch of war hawks, especially since the Clinton administration took over. The State Department has always been like this now when it comes to Victoria Nulands and all these people who are just warmongers to the nth degree. So that was it. That was this summit that was over the weekend. It was like
I just want to
Friday, I think it was.
reiterate, there was a guy from Housing Advocacy, and 1,500 people who are unhoused lost their lives from March 2020 until recently. And that just goes to show you how bad the crisis is. They have done absolutely zero on that issue. Zero.
Arthur Carter says, keep up the great work, fam.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you, Arthur, so much. Hanging over on Rokfin. 63 people hanging out there. Over a couple hundred people hanging out on the YouTubes. Like, share, subscribe. This is the time. Let's just jump right into it. Johnny, do you have anything else to say about that section? Okay. So let's go through this section over here. This is the leaked Zoom call that exposed the Western regime, exposed the Western plan for regime change in Ethiopia. Now, we did a show about 6 months ago. You had a guest on, talked about the TPLF, which is the Tigris, how do you say it? People's Liberation Front, I believe it was. Tigray. I didn't say that. I said Tigris. Tigray. Yeah, so we did a whole story on this, and they were kind of like a break off of the old regime that was there, that was very Western friendly, unlike the new regime or the new elected officials in Ethiopia who are there now, who have been fighting with this group in the northwestern part of Ethiopia, also on the border of Eritrea. So we did a report. We kind of showed the people that there is no genocide going on, that it was manufactured by the West to manufacture consent to go in there. About a year and a half ago, fam, we did a show with Mark Sloboda talking about the dam, that they'd started filling the dams, and talking about the geopolitical ramifications that could come of this situation. This is a dam that was funded by the Chinese, and as we know, there's going to be proxy wars in this area. So now we have all this coming to fruition as this leaked Zoom call comes out. And it shows, it says, the West diplomats meet in secret to decide how to help the TPLF. I mean, this is literally somebody, they released this whole information. It's like, wow, they're sitting there and plotting an actual coup and regime change against the existing government over there.
Yeah, and I just have to say real quick that the TPLF, they have murdered, raped, pillaged people in the Horn of Africa. I mean, there are women there, and Rania Kalik actually just went to Africa with her crew. of Breakthrough News, and like some of the stories that they were telling them it's absolutely crazy and disgusting how the United States, once again, I mean, it's not crazy. We know this is what they do, but they are manufacturing consent, as if they're trying to paint the TPLF as these innocent people that we need to stand by and help when they are committing these disastrous atrocities. So don't let the United States say that they're going to stand by humanitarian aid, or that they're going to go out there and care about Afghani women, or that they're going to do anything humanitarian, because they are actually enabling the opposite, because they want to privatize the resources of these countries where there are a lot of natural resources in Africa, in Latin America. It's the same thing. Yeah. The fourth industrial revolution, all of that is happening. And that is what we're really gearing at. This is why they're so adamant about this.
Yeah, and if they can't privatize the resources, they want to make sure that the country's unstable as can be, like the Congo, where they can extract stuff like lithium for pennies on the dollar. That's what they're doing right now. For people to eat, they have to go down in the mines to pull this lithium out, and now Americans in the West get it for pennies on the dollar. Same thing they try to do when it comes to diamonds and whatnot. So this says the West Horns of Africa experts have been meeting with the TPLF leader and the TPLF/OLF supporters in secret, even as its governments claim to be impartial. So they're saying that they're being just for peace negotiations. They're not. The TPLF's Burhan Gebre Christos speaks at as TPLF member, proposed head of transitional government, limo Uber drivers, and that's what they were calling them. That's what the people of this region were starting to call, like, oh, they're trying to give this country over to the limo drivers, to the Uber drivers and stuff. And Washington-based Ethio-American diaspora. Donald Yamamoto, recently the U.S. ambassador to Somalia, who just retired this year, to TPLF official Burhan Gebre Christos. Abiy is not listening. That's the president of Ethiopia. Obasanjo has not been extraordinarily helpful or very active, and so there are other opportunities that you see. Vicky Huddleston, former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for African Affairs and U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Africa to Burhan Gebre Christos. I couldn't agree more with you, that Abiy should step down. There should be an all-inclusive transition government. So here they are, literally plotting and planning to overthrow the government to hand it back over to friendly hands.
So those are just excerpts from the Zoom call, right?
From the Zoom call.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
Yes. It's kind of funny because I said it was leaked, but somebody just said it was a participant that put it out. So I don't know how they recorded it, John, because don't you need to get permission to record the thing usually?
There are other ways.
Maybe they did a screen record.
Right.
But this is what's happened, why a lot of people have taken to the streets now.
Yeah.
While we see all these people out there. France's retired diplomat and writer Stephen Gompertz openly speculated on the potential for Abiy to be forced from power. Even if Abiy sticks to his guns, which unfortunately he seems to be doing, we either hope that the people around him, either in the government or military, realize that this is going nowhere and might force him to, accept the, what's that word?
Cessation.
Thank you, of hostilities, or force him to step down. They're trying to push him out, fam. They are trying to push him out, and that is what's going on. That's why you see all these people in the street. Now, Wyatt Reed, a good friend of ours, we've just met. He did some great coverage on this. There's been a lot of stuff going on in Washington, a lot of marches, a lot of panels. So he caught this panel the other day, and this is some great. There's some doctors, some Ethiopian people, some citizens that really spoke at this one particular meeting where he caught it. It was called the No More panel, where they're telling the Americans, no more of your bullshit, get out of the business, get out of the reason, leave us be. This is Dr. Branu Tai. He sets the record straight about Ethiopian at the No More panel in D.C. this weekend. First, there was no genocide in Tigray, which we brought on a guest who talked about that. They were just saying that. And I was arguing with somebody who was just kind of mimicking that. Oh, there's a genocide going on in Ethiopia. We need to get involved.
They're so easily duped by just State Department talking points. All right, so let's listen to what he said.
Check this out. Yeah.
I'd like to point out a few facts on the ground to set context for our conversation. First, there was no genocide in Tigray. This was clearly determined by the UN Office for Human Rights and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission's report, which is accepted by many countries. The pretext of saying there is a genocide in Tigray is only an attempt for the West to put their will on the people of Ethiopia, Eritrea, and the whole in general. The ethnic-based constitution imposed on Ethiopia by TPLF in 1991, with endorsement of the West, is the source of most of the troubles happening not only in Ethiopia, but in the Horn of Africa region. Imagine a government that has put your ethnicity on your car plate, your ethnicity on your ID card. This is what TPLF did to Ethiopia. If it was not for the wisdom of the Ethiopian people, bloodbaths could have occurred worse than Rwanda. The Ethiopian government declared a unilateral ceasefire in June 2021, nearly 6 months ago. But the belligerent TPLF, supported by the West, took this as a defeat and expanded the conflict to the adjacent Amhara and Afar regions. And they are still committing atrocities to which the West has given a deaf ear. Now, the aid convoys to Tigray are not blocked by the Ethiopian government. In fact, they are blocked by the TPLF fighters who are fighting on the Afar front and the Wallo front, which were the entry points for food aid. So the Ethiopian government in the last 6 months was not responsible for the humanitarian crisis that is occurring in Tigray.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, that was just a really nice summary of pretty much everything that happened. And again, I just want to reiterate the point that CNN, MSNBC, mainstream media is not covering this at all in the way it should be at all. They're mentioning, they're, making the TPLF like the heroes, the people we need to defend, and they're not talking about the mass protests that are happening. They're not talking about the crimes that those people, the TPLF, are committing. They're not talking about the humanitarian crisis that's happening because of our involvement. So they're completely putting on deaf ears, as he said, and just not addressing it at all, which is why it's essential, like independent journalists like Wyatt and others who have been out there we literally report on what they're seeing with the people of Ethiopia rising up. Ilhan Omar is in danger of having her constituents in Minnesota go to her office and protest because she has advocated for the TPLF. There are rumors from D.C. that her boyfriend is pro TPLF. He's a Democratic insider. I think actually now her husband. But she has advocated for sanctions.
Yeah.
Well,
the funny thing is too, I don't know if it's necessarily funny, but we've been talking about this, that when the West was splitting up a lot of boundaries, they made sure they keep people who have different ethnicities in the same area to keep it destabilized. So you're talking about the TPLF who are making people put their ethnicity on their identification cards. Therefore, there can be conflict all the time and people fighting. So this is by design as well.
It's very neoliberal.
It's very, very neoliberalish, and it's meant to divide people and for people to kill each other. The West can always manufacture consent to go in and do what's what. But this is all about resources. This is all about being a proxy against China with the dam and their influence now in Africa. We've been talking about AFRICOM and them kind of loading up troops over there. You know what I'm saying? Shit is going to be going down in Africa over the next couple decades because of the natural resources there. The fourth industrial revolution, there will be battlefields in these areas, and this is just the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. So here's another clip from Dr. Tay. Okay, Dr. Tay explains how by looting trucks, blocking convoys, and using food aid for military purposes only, the TPLF terrorists are actually responsible for the humanitarian crisis in Ethiopia. And that's what they're designed to do. That's what they're getting paid to do. That's what they're told to do. Cause this conflict. We got your back. You'll be the new government once we get rid of the Ethiopian government. And the Ethiopian government, this particular government, had signed peace treaties with Eritrea, talked to Somalia. So it was totally different than the conflict that was going on for years over there. And then the last tweet I have is, let me pull it up.
Dr. Bahrutai explains how the concerted propaganda campaign against Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, and broader Horn of Africa works. And you know, you guys have heard it already. Number one, the TPLF fabricates lies, which we've seen them. We just went over. Yeah. The second part is the corporate media airs them, which is, of course, this is imperialism and their corporate propagandists. Yep. And third, the U.S. and the UN use the lies to fabricate that are fabricated to demand more sanctions on the democratically elected governments. In other words, to meddle and become the purveyors of power in these countries they have zero jurisdiction of being in, right? So that's essentially what we're talking about. And the last part we want to do show, Jonny, is a video of Ethiopians taken to the streets. Thousands of Ethiopians. I mean, you will not see this on CNN, MSNBC. Yeah. Look at how many people were in Washington, D.C. Yeah. And there was subsequently
Eritreans too. That if there was any, they came out too as well. We heard as well.
Right. So, the Horn of Africa in general, and also there was one in Los Angeles too that
Abraham Marquez
covered as well.
Thank you, Abraham. Abraham, good job.
Yeah.
But look at that. Look how many people are taken to the streets right now.
I mean, but you don't see that on the news at all. They can't show you that because that would show an actual uprising against a U.S.-backed faction, right? But they only show the 5 clowns or the 3 clowns in Cuba,
the payasos,
the literal payasos in Cuba, to show there's an uprising against the Cuban Castro government. No. Like, if there is an actual legitimate uprising, not a color revolution, but an actual uprising, you will not see it on mainstream media. You will not see them talking about it the way it should be talked about. Yep. So.
And that's it. That's what's going on over there, ladies and gentlemen. It's kind of funny because the 2 stories we talked about today, we've been slowly following these from the root of what happens. Yeah. Going, okay, something's going on over here. Zelensky now the president. Here we go. Yes, it's all caught up. Oh, we talked about the dam about a year and a half ago. Like, this is going to cause problems. Watch geopolitically. The West is not going to take this. Egypt is mad. We sponsor Egypt. We back CC. Something's going to happen in that region. President Biden clean up the State Department.
Yeah, right.
Fuck you. He's part of that State Department.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice seeing them say that. I've never seen an American with a sign that says President Biden clean up the State Department. How nice would it be if Americans were a fraction of aware as people in the Horn of Africa, as people in Latin America are aware? You know why they're aware? Because they have no choice. They're aware because they live in these conditions where the West rapes, pillages their lands, privatizes everything, and they don't see the benefits of it at all. This is why these populations, and you can call them left, you can call them anti-imperialist, whatever they are, they're the ones that are leading these movements. See, the movements, the revolution is happening in the global South. It is not happening here because people are too comfortable. And they're distracted, right? And one of the stories that the media has been silent on, that has led to just, compared to Kyle Rittenhouse and how much attention that got. The Ghislaine Maxwell trial has gotten literally next to zero attention from the political mainstream media, other than to kind of paint it as it's these one people, like just Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein.
They're bad apples.
And, Fox will say, it's all Clinton. CNN will say it's Trump. And that's all that we've been hearing. But independent journalists have been covering it. One of them is going to be with us on the show shortly. You sent me the link. I will send him the link right now.
By the way, just going back to Africa real quick too, as we're finishing up on that story. When they built the dam, Ethiopia, you're talking about a country that's been so impoverished for so long, to be able to give their people electricity, is a big thing throughout the whole country. But once again, it's not at the guise of the United States empire. You know what I'm saying? This was the Chinese coming in and helping them fund this project, and we can't have that. You know what I'm saying? And also Egypt complaining about it. And that's the whole thing. Is I didn't know if Egypt had a legitimate gripe from this dam, because that's what they were saying. Oh, they fill up the dam, it's going to cause problems. It's going to really hurt what's going on along the Nile and whatnot. There he is. You can see. You got the Chinese there. Look at that, Johnny. That's a great fucking shot. I don't even remember that. You see the Saudis up to the right over there, the kingdom and the oils and whatnot. The Americans, like, can we get our jets in there and whatnot? Wow, that is just a great Turkey over there too as well. The Chinese. That's just amazing. I love that picture right over there.
All right.
That's
and
it.
so Addy tweeted about it already. He should be here any minute. And yeah, I mean, like I said, if we've been talking about this for a while, but it's kind of crazy how it's hard to spot these things before they happen, right?
Yeah.
But if you pay enough attention and you're looking at, the U.S. regime change playbook, what the United States is constantly all the time. So then you start getting familiar with these things to where you don't have to be psychic like me to predict what's going to happen, fam.
You're not psychic. You're psychotic.
Wow, using the woman is crazy trope here. What a sexist you are. Right?
Fam, we could talk shit. It's within the fam.
No.
By the way, almost 90 people over on Rokfin. Let's get on over there, guys. That's awesome. Couple hundred on the YouTubes. Remember we used to get like 1,000 people on YouTube and stuff before they started censoring us, demonetizing us, beating us down and stuff. So
by the way, if you guys have a chance, go support Jason Burmas. He's got his whole account taken down by YouTube.
It's terrible.
For bullshit reasons.
Yeah.
He didn't do anything wrong. And YouTube, he gets a lot of people on Rokfin, but he uses YouTube to get people on Rokfin. So just support Jason. He's really great, especially on the subject of COVID.
He's good on this subject over here. I believe he had this guest on before talking about this. You know what I'm saying? Burmy definitely had Addy Adds on, and Addy Adds is in the house right now because he's not. I know, right? He's got Julian Assange. The guy's out there covering the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, and he still has time to stop and cover Julian Assange. You're a mensch, my man. You're a mensch. And what should we call you, Addy?
Addy works. Thank you, Mr. Jardula, and thank you, Miss Isabel. It's really an honor to be on the Convo Couch. I know you guys are boots on the ground as well all over Latin America, covering the elections there. So it's really a pleasure and an honor to be featured today.
Well, thank you. I mean, we're really loving the work you're doing. We've put up a bunch of your tweets before in covering this trial. We started covering this trial back a while ago, and we kind of, well, not the trial, but the whole thing with Ghislaine and Epstein and all of that. And then, of course, Epstein didn't kill himself, and now we're here watching this trial. And my sentiment personally is that none of these people are really going to pay what the price that they should pay. It is being framed as only being, like Pasta says, a few bad apples. But we want to hear from you. We're going to ask you a few questions, to give the audience a perspective on how this whole thing has been.
Yeah, the number one question I have for you, Addy, is because I've took a look at your tweets before. I took a look at some of your work and stuff like that. And you're covering this beautifully like a journalist. You're giving us updates. This is what's going on. This person's testifying today and stuff. But your commentating side, the other side of Addy Adds that says, okay, what is this case really about? How is it being conducted? Is this the way this case is being conducted? Is it really going to give we the people the justice that we deserve?
At this point in time, I would say no. I think by and large, most people will not be satisfied with the outcome or even the way this trial is going. When you take a look at the prosecution, you can kind of ask a couple questions that are key questions. Do they want the truth out? And then do they actually want to win the case, which I do think are mutually exclusive. They're not inclusive. Certainly, I don't think they don't want the truth out. Because they themselves, the defense, was the one who have redacted the names on the flight manifest, names we haven't seen yet, which doesn't make any sense. Why would the defense care about that? And on the other hand, you got the prosecution. They themselves were the ones that brought up the big names we've already heard, names like Kevin Spacey and Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, Chris Tucker, etc. But do the prosecution want to win this case? I would say yes, but maybe not as definitively as we would hope. When you look at Comey being the one that kind of redacted the names, even Judge Nathan was like, why are you doing this? You should be able to just redact the witness names and that's it, and let the public see who else went to the island, which I do think the public has a right to know that. So that being said, just 4 witnesses as well, which has been confusing to some. And I was talking to Mr. Lee of Inner City Press several times, and he has his own doubts with how secretive the government is being with their prosecution. That combined with the fact that we thought this was going to go 6 weeks into mid-January even, but it looks like at this rate we could be wrapped up by Christmas. So I might have a week at the end of the year here where the trial's done, and I'm just going to be in New York. So it's a bit confusing from that point of view, but also is why hasn't Ghislaine Maxwell gotten any sex crimes? We got at least one witness testifying. I'm sorry, two of them testifying to being fondled by Maxwell on a massage table. One of them being Annie Farmer. And that's something too. A lot of these witnesses were of age when these interactions occurred with Epstein and Maxwell. And you see the Judge Nathan, even going as far to say at the beginning of these testimonies that because no sex crimes were committed, that you shouldn't have that reflect on the characters of Epstein and Maxwell or the propensity to commit crimes. Yeah, it's a bit confusing, I would say, and wherever you guys want to take it, I could talk about this for a long time. I know we don't have that much time, but yeah, any questions you guys have, I'm happy to answer.
I mean, just, right off the bat, like, whose testimony was the most surprising to you, or at least the most compelling?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. I would say the most credible witness in terms of competence, intelligence, and composure was definitely Annie Farmer, who was the witness I think most people were looking forward to the greatest degree. But in terms of an emotional effect on the jury and those witnessing this testimony, I would say Caroline was the most effective. A really rough upbringing. She, was molested by her grandfather beginning when she was 4, trafficked to Epstein from 14 years old to 18 years old, and basically pimped out by her boyfriend throughout that process. And he actually took the stand as well, and appeared he pimped out multiple girls to Epstein and Maxwell. But legally, it probably would be witness Jane, who was our first witness. And that was a big bingo that came through this past week. And I got to put a feather in my cap. There's a litigator who I've been talking to as well. He's been showing up every single day, likewise. And we were watching the second pilot, actually the chief pilot for the majority of the time that Epstein was in power. And he's testified to never having met Epstein's assistant until 2003. And the reason this was key is because the defense was doing, I would say, a pretty good job. Christian Everdale, who I would say is, in my opinion, the most impressive, and the least impressive is also on the defense as far as attorneys go, Polyuka, who's been written about as a sort of monster, the way he's been cross-examining some of the witnesses, which I wouldn't say is too much of a stretch. Very harsh cross-examination of Caroline. But the key point came because the defense was trying to purport that you couldn't prove that this Jane, who has the same exact first name as Epstein's assistant, who, if anybody's up on this case, they know who that is. I don't want to say that name until the trial's over, but if you do your own digging, you can figure out who that is. So they were trying to say, well, this 1996 flight, it was the 11th of November, 1996. Just the first name was written on the manifest. And, they're trying to say, oh, this was Epstein's assistant. You can't prove it was the witness Jane. Until the pilot said, well, actually, I didn't meet Epstein's assistant until 7 years later. And immediately, myself and the litigator, his name's Joe Neerman. He's a Good Logic on YouTube. I actually just talked to him the other night. Both of us were like, oh, my goodness. And, I think most everybody else was like a little confused. But I was like, that was a huge bingo for the prosecution there. But going back to the prosecution, that another confusing thing they did was they didn't admit evidence that would have certainly helped their cause. The evidence being these schoolgirl outfits that were sent to Caroline. And the reason they gave was they didn't want to have this cause further trauma, or they were trying to be sympathetic to the witnesses, which, the judge was basically like, I sympathize with this, but you're kind of leaving the court hanging and the jury hanging there too, with not admitting that evidence into court. So again, another confusing move there by the prosecution.
So the audience understands there's 4 victims, right, that are only going by first names. What are they? Can you explain to the audience so they know, because they didn't use their first and last name. So I want the audience to understand what you're talking about when you say Caroline.
Sure. So we got Jane, who was the first witness, and then Kate, and then Caroline, who just used her first name. That's her real first name, no last name. And then Annie Farmer was the only one who used her real name.
Full name. Yeah.
So yeah, mostly pseudonymous witnesses so far. with the exception of the farmers. Annie's mother testified at the end of the day Friday, basically just to corroborate what Annie was saying about her upbringing. Nothing too explosive there from the mother. But then at the end of the day Friday, the prosecution definitively rested their case. The defense asked for all charges to be dropped, which Judge Nathan promptly declined to do that. But then the defense again, they plan to arrest or aim to arrest by the 21st. So if that's the case, depending on how long the jury deliberates, like I said, this could be wrapped up by Christmas Eve possibly. So again, very surprising development there.
And no Virginia Roberts, correct? One of the most known victims, right there, the most famous victim. Has there been any reason given why she wasn't brought to testify?
No reason officially. I've actually talked to Maria Farmer about this, and she kind of points to Virginia Roberts as the most important witness in this whole saga and one with the most damning testimony. And it's her contention and many people's contention that because her and Maria Farmer's testimonies would be so damning, that is why they were disallowed from testifying. And one more thing on Maria Farmer that I think is quite relevant is she tried to get an unredacted FOIA from 1996 admitted in federal court. The FBI disallowed this. And the only reason the FBI gave were 3 letters, CIA. So lots of cloak and dagger stuff going on here from the government, to say the least. And going back to the evidence too, we're seeing pictures of Maxwell and Epstein being admitted, which the mainstream's lapping up. They love seeing those pictures of Ghislaine or Cleavage hanging out, and them hanging out at the Queen's cabin. It's really salacious, but where's the videos, right? Where's the evidence? Well, it's probably in the evidence black hole at Quantico, probably never to be seen again, in all likelihood, which is quite unfortunate, and discussing the FBI and the CIA, that's a whole nother show entirely.
Has there been any mention of Epstein Ranch and any of the houses that he had? I mean, he had multiple homes, New York and New Mexico.
Paris,
like what? Yeah. Has there been any mention of that? Because like that would be like common sense for them to talk about that.
Yeah, you bring up, it's colloquially called the Zorro Ranch. Interestingly enough, the FBI didn't think it was important enough to raid. The only one that raided, to my knowledge, was his apartment here in New York. Did come up in Annie's testimony and Annie Farmer's testimony. The installation there that we now know to be the Zorro Ranch on that property wasn't there at the time she visited. It was kind of a smaller residence that she stayed, wherein she stayed with Maxwell and Epstein. So New Mexico did come up, and Annie testified to Epstein trying to cuddle with her in bed. She got very uncomfortable, ended up locking herself in the bathroom, and left the New Mexico trip with kind of a bad taste in her mouth. Didn't want to really associate herself with those pair again. Not can't really blame her for that. But really, it's Maxwell that's on trial here. So, and that's another thing too, is the defense. In general, it's just been very Epstein heavy, talking about Epstein, but Epstein is dead, for better or worse. I would say for worse in terms of justice. And that was one of the first things the defense said is, I think it was on the first day or the second day, was my client is not Jeffrey Epstein, basically was the message. So I'm not sure how much of a defense that is. If like in trials to come, that's going to be like the first thing the defense will say is, Your Honor, our client's name is not Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know how much that holds weight in court or not. But yeah, the Zorro Ranch, this New Mexico property did come up. Several properties in New York, including Mark Epstein, who was a proprietor of a property that housed underage victims. And as well, he's tied to MC2 modeling with Jean-Luc Brunel, who was taken into custody late last year, actually, while I was covering election stuff in Atlanta. And that was at Charles de Gaulle Airport. Other guys implicated, Peter Nygaard, also taken into custody over the past year or so. So, a couple more trials that are, very much related to this network that are still yet to be concluded. But I'm interested to see how the public's going to react.
Well, number one, there's some new stuff going on in Atlanta, Georgia, when it comes to elections. We'll talk about that after. But let's stick to the case for 1 second, because it seems like the prosecutors are trying to kind of push some of the blame on like the assistant, the limo driver, the pilot, whatnot, and try to get the distraction and get them away from like the big names of Bill Gates and Clinton and Trump and stuff like that. Is that tactic working at all when they try to kind of say, well, aren't you one of the recruiters too as well when it came to the assistant?
Yeah, it was actually the defense, and I think it was again Christian Everdale who was doing the cross-examination of Juan Alessi, who was he's being called the butler in the mainstream media, and even some independent reporters are calling him the butler. But the butler was actually Alfredo Rodriguez, who was the guy who had the black book, and he tried selling the black book to some lawyers. Those lawyers turned him into the FBI, and selective as they are, the FBI decided to go after Alfredo Rodriguez. He's actually dead now, similar to Detective Joseph Recarey, who was the first lead detective in Florida. So, more than one mysterious death related to this Epstein saga. But Everdale came right out and asked the question. I believe the quote was, "That doesn't make you guilty of sex trafficking, does it, sir?" And that was objected to, and that objection was sustained by Judge Nathan, probably unsurprisingly so. But not just him, even the boyfriend driving the girls to Epstein's place. But I think that's why Maria Farmer's testimony would be so damning, because she had heard Maxwell kind of, turn into this demonic demeanor and talking about hunting for nubiles or young ladies who just had their menarche or their first period. And that was part of what went on. And because Juan Alessi was the driver, I think they were, almost quite obviously, Everdale was trying to make it look like the driver, Juan Alessi, was the one doing the recruiting. That kind of moral gray area is a different conversation. But he was doing what he was told by Maxwell and Epstein. And Maxwell was the one who would say, okay, that's the girl I want to, pull over the car.
Pull the car over,
go,
yeah.
Right. I want to go talk to her. And that story was brought up with Virginia Roberts.
Yeah.
So they went over that, how they, it was actually at Mar-a-Lago that happened at. So, yeah, that's definitely a tactic for sure that's been used.
Why do you think that, just looking at what's going on with Julian Assange, then the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, and then the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, what has been your observation as to both how the media and the public have responded?
Yeah, great question. Well, the Rittenhouse trial was a state trial wherein cameras are allowed in court, unlike federal court. But that being said, there was a huge demand for a call-in line, which the judge denied. Again, talking to Mr. Lee of Inner City Press, when people kind of pegged us as the two leaders, which I found very flattering, because that's his kitchen. That's all he does is cover SDNY trials. And he himself is a lawyer. I actually didn't know that. I found that out recently. But yeah, it's I think for several reasons. The Rittenhouse trial is based on an issue that is extremely divisive, and that's the right to bear arms, the right to defend yourself. Going back to the BLM and Antifa angle, and even the pseudo-racial angle, which for some reason the media was trying to purport was part of it, even though all the participants in that, I believe, were all white males in that Rittenhouse situation. And it's issues like that the media likes to focus on, the mainstream corporate media, not media like us, because they're so divisive. Whereas you look at an issue like the Assange saga, that is an issue where you see many people on both sides of the aisle. I just saw Tulsi Gabbard came out on Twitter about 2 hours ago, calling for Biden to pardon him. Much less divisive, because you have journalism itself basically on trial, with Julian Assange being the guy, being the chosen one, locked up, by himself on the front line there in HMP Belmarsh. And that's something too I've been trying to, like you mentioned, bring attention to, even though my hands are quite full here. I was reporting on the CIA involvement in the Assange case over a year ago almost, and fortunately that came out in the mainstream, kind of breaking through recently. So that's been good. But yeah, it was very scary. I was very sad to hear that appeal get overturned. But they do have until the 23rd of this month, I believe it is, Assange's team does, to appeal that. So we'll see what happens. But as far as what they're trying to do, they're trying to torture him to death. They're trying to torture Julian Assange to death. They don't really care about locking him up. They want him to stop breathing. whether that's the CIA jabbing him in the neck with something like Bob Maxwell died thanks to the Mossad, or just making him go insane. He just had a heart attack, a mini heart attack recently, and now he's on heart attack medicine. So it's nothing to do with justice or due process. It's really just about trying to take Assange out and making life hell for him.
I don't know what you're talking about with Bob Maxwell. He slipped on his yacht, somehow went over to the thing and landed in the water on the Lady Ghislaine. But, well, listen, this whole saga, I think, a lot of us have said that this is all for show when it comes to the Ghislaine Maxwell trial / Epstein trial, because we all understand this is what it's about. That we'll never see Bill Gates, we'll never see Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, any of these people, Lex Wessner, we'll never see them take the stand. Bill Richardson, another one. Some of us think it's all for show. What are the people, going to get out of this trial when it concludes?
Yeah, that is a great question. Difficult to answer, I would say. It does seem like the ominous them, deep state, shadow government, this cabal, they are trying to, I think, do a couple things. At the best for us, offer up Ghislaine's head on a platter as kind of a token of, okay, we're sorry this happened. Hopefully you're happy with this person kind of taking the fall. And that's the thing, too, is they probably wanted to kill Ghislaine, but it would have just been too obvious, especially after Epstein's non-suicide in jail. So, it's my contention that there's multiple government agencies across multiple nations who have an active interest in covering this up. But hopefully the justice comes for Ghislaine, and that appeases the public insofar as she gets charged with everything. But unfortunately, I don't see that happening at this point. I also, however, don't see her getting completely acquitted. So I would say this is my take, that the partial acquittals and the partial convictions at this point in time. But Chris Hedges had a great quote at last Saturday. We had an Epstein Justice rally that was organized by Nick Bryant, author of the Franklin Scandal. He's the one who broke that network, and he actually was the man with the Black Book. He had an anonymous source give him the Black Book in 2012. He sat on it for 3 years before releasing it in 2015 to Gawker, of all places, because nobody in the legacy media wanted to touch that piece of intelligence. And Chris Hedges said, Ghislaine Maxwell is not the end. She is the beginning. And I really hope he's right, because you have all these co-conspirators, Sarah Kellen, Nadia Marcinkova, Claire Hazel. You got Eileen Guggenheim, who's been mentioned as well, who's part of this art school. Not to mention, if you're going up the chain, you're talking about Les Wexner, you're talking about Bill Gates, like you mentioned, Bill Richardson. So whether they go up the chain or down it, I think we want to see both things happen. So I really hope Chris Hedges is right, and that this is just the beginning.
So the audience knows those names you mentioned first were people that helped recruiting with dancers or models and all that whatnot that really have not been brought to justice as well. Just want to point that out. So.
Well, thank you, Addy, so much for coming on. Can you please tell people where to find you and follow you if you on Twitter if they're not familiar with you?
Oh, thank you, guys. I really appreciate you both for having me on. It's been an honor. I've been really, really suppressed this year on YouTube. I had my 9th channel terminated on Monday night / Tuesday morning. I woke up, it was gone. Twitter, I'm on at Twitter at Addy Adds, one spelled out ONEADDYADDS. And I know you guys are on Rokfin, which is great. I'm trying to send people to Rokfin now. So I'm also on Rokfin if people want to check that out.
Awesome, man.
I'm on Telegram. Likewise, that's t.me/1AddyAds, one spelled out. And then my website, which I'm going to try to update again tonight because I just got on the new one, Buy Me a Coffee. It's kind of like Patreon. But I got the Cash App, Venmo, etc. But my website is addyadds.one, so addyadds.one. So again, thank you guys both. I really, really appreciate it, both of you guys.
Well, we appreciate the work you're doing out there, man. That's awesome work. You're freezing your tuchus out there in the cold. And when you want to have us on your show on Rokfin to talk elections, because we know you love elections, we're here for you, my man.
Oh, yes. I would love that. I would love that. Maybe in January after this is wrapped up, I would love to do that. I appreciate you guys, really do. Because like I said, it was, middle of this year, I was getting really demoralized. And, I'm not a quitter, but those thoughts start to creep in. It's like, maybe I should try something else. But
that's what they want. That's what
yes.
they want.
Yes, sir.
Don't
That's
do it.
exactly what they want. But they wanted to make it impossible for us to have a living outside the mainstream mainstream propaganda machine. So places like Rokfin, Buy Me a Coffee, etc. They make it a lot easier for us to sustain ourselves.
Thank you so much for coming on. Get yourself, if it wraps up early, get yourself a ticket to South Florida. It's a lot warmer than it is in New York, my man. You're doing amazing work. Keep it up, and we'll keep our eyes on you, brother.
We'll see you next time.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys both.
Bye, Addy. Addy Adds, man.
Doing phenomenal work.
Out
One of
there.
the few journalists, I think, out there reporting on the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. I mean, like we said before, I was on Misty's chat. We need help. There's no possible way that all of us could cover things in the depth that is necessary. And I mean, we need somebody out there covering this trial. Well, I agree with you that it is for show. I don't think we're going to see justice.
Yeah.
I'm a lot more pessimistic. I don't think we're going to see any sort of justice on these people because they are the justice. I mean, they buy the justice system. So, especially people like Bill Gates and Lex Wexner, you're not going to see those people be touched. Prince Andrew, like these are nefarious, psychopathic individuals with a lot of power.
Yeah.
And I just don't see the justice happening. But it does open the door for people to be like, wait a minute,
Let's look
I
more.
want justice now.
Yeah.
That's the important part.
They look down the rabbit hole now. They look at it a little bit more nuanced. And one of the most important questions we asked Addy Adds, and it was about, Zorro Ranch. What are we getting from Zorro Ranch? There are people there who have testified that have been to Zorro Ranch. Why aren't we grabbing people over there? Why haven't we seen what's going on? There was a lot of money, the New York Times reported, fam, that transhumanism was being practiced in Zorro Ranch by Epstein with other women. That should be an area of concern, especially when it comes to Bill Gates, especially when it comes to DARPA, everything else we talk about, what's going on nowadays. And yet, it's being left off the map. Left off the map. Let me check real quick, by the way. We have 235 watching on YouTube's. We have 122. Look at you all supporting the Rokfin. You heard what Addy Adds said. He's over there. JVB, thank you so much for the Super Ray contribution. It is always appreciated on the couch. And Roar Media says the Convo Couch keeping us sane in the world of insanity. Sister Fee, Brother Johnny, and Brother P, you are all champions of truth in a cesspool of authoritarian censorship. Thank you, fams. Thank you.
That was Oz. That's poetic.
That was totally Oz. All right, so fam.
So
not really breaking news, but breaking somewhat.
No, this is a two-part. I made it into two sections for the video sequence, but it's really all about Assange. These next two little sections are very quick. I just wanted to, I know other people have covered it, but I just wanted to once again talk about just the atrocities that are being committed against Julian Assange. And he is not just one person. He represents a journalist to us all of us, and also the fact that of those of us who exposed the journalism, the imperialism of the deep state, the national security state apparatus. And doctors confirmed that Julian Assange suffered a stroke on the morning of his latest hearing. And Amnesty called this week's ruling, reversing a decision to refuse extradition, a travesty of justice. And I want to read a little bit about this. So who confirmed this was his partner, Stella Morris. And he had this in the last trial that you guys saw where, he was on video format on Belmarsh prison. His fiance is blaming the extreme stress caused by the U.S. extradition battle. And he is, of course, we know he's being held in the maximum security jail. And it is believed that the mini stroke was triggered by the stress of the U.S. court action. And it happened at the time of the high court appearance via video link in October. If you recall, Kevin Gustola, Richard Medhurst, Taylor Hudak, all the people that had the link were reporting how he was looking ill and how he wasn't looking good. Well, during that time in October, he actually had an entire stroke. Yeah. And, he had a drooping right eyelid. He had memory problems, which are a sign of neurological damage. And that's what happens when you have a stroke. And they believe the mini stroke was triggered by the stress of the ongoing U.S. action against him, and overall is indicative of an overall decline on his health as he faces his third Christmas behind bars. And he has 2 kids, as you all know, and it is really just really sad that this is happening. And of course, the media isn't reporting on it. Mainstream media, they're reporting on it because they have to at this point.
Very little.
But we've known, we've talked about, you know, and others, Steve and all of the Assange community have talked about how his health state is and how just terrible it is.
Well, fam, I don't know why you're going crazy. This is just one white dude, right? That's all Julian Assange is. And by the way, we know he's okay because we heard them say in court that he went back into the mess hall to ask for another orange juice. So he's okay.
And that was, he's saying that because that was literally
what they
their
said.
Excuse.
That's what they said, that he wasn't mentally disturbed because he was able to go back and ask for an extra orange juice.
And reminder that the reason why he wasn't extradited back in January, well, they didn't grant that attempt to extradite him, was because of how terrible the U.S. prison system was, but also his mental and health state. And so when you see that this is happening, you realize they're basically trying to make this trial so long that he either becomes suicidal, commits suicide because they have tested that he is, or they just kill him because they drain him from his health. And just so you guys know,
pretty much
what happened was a transient ischemic attack. It's the interruption of a blood supply to the brain, and it's a warning sign of a full stroke. He since has had an MRI and is now taking anti-stroke medication. And Stella Morris said, quote, "Julian is struggling, and I fear this mini stroke could be the precursor to a more major attack. It compounds our fears about his ability to survive the longer this long legal battle goes on." And guys, that's exactly what it is. They're just trying to make this a long trial, to keep it going so they can just weed him out because they wanted to kill him. I mean, this isn't a conspiracy. We know that with the Yahoo
want to make
News
a lesson
report,
out of him too.
the CIA released that they were plotting his murder. We know that, and so yes, you're absolutely right.
They want to make a lesson out of him. Anybody, this affects anybody in media, anybody who's a citizen journalist or anything. If you speak out against the security state, if you speak out against the military industrial, if you speak out against the imperialism of the United States, you will spend your days behind bar and you will die behind bars. Then why is it important to also understand that it isn't just one white dude? Because I say this all the time, that this isn't just one white dude. And this is for people out there who are very much into anti-racist, whatnot. Julian Assange pulled the curtains out and exposed the empire, which is one of the most racist empires, goes around killing indigenous people in the homeland. I mean, isn't that what more Julian Assange is about, is exposing the mass racism that United States imperialists?
Right. I mean, he exposed how the United States and the West are going around the world killing black and brown people, bombing them for money, for privatization, for profit. So, I mean, and it's not just him, it's WikiLeaks as a whole. And, as one of the founders of WikiLeaks, it is, that is it. Like, that is the essential. Being a publisher, he didn't write as much as he published, so to speak, because it was just straight information, straight documents that WikiLeaks produced. And you can't say that that's not true, because they were actual documents from military officials, from people in the security state, and exposing that is exposing the white supremacy of this empire. So these people that say, oh well, he's just a white guy, are completely just missing the entire point of the exposure. And of course, he's one of many people who have been jailed, and the Assange activists constantly talk about everybody else, every person that has been jailed, and like Mumia and all of these people, they have talked about it. It's just like, I think it and they've even self-criticized and said, yes, we need to talk more about other people too. But he represents that sort of unveiling of the U.S. national security state. I mean, he inspired so many journalists that are, and commentators and YouTubers that are out there today to really talk about these things. And so okay, so I just wanted to really also mention this part. I think I put we already went over that, right?
I put it into the snuck it into the other part. I did a boo-boo. I didn't tell Fam, because Fam did want to talk about too as well, when you were out there talking about the Democrats having their party on this Iowa-class battleship over here, this killing machine of sorts, is that they also rejected, and you mentioned this, the fact that they were going to put Julian Assange into their platform, right?
Yeah,
or into their...
it's the third tweet, Johnny. I just want to show them. So the next one, sorry, that's the water one? No. Sorry, it's this one.
There is
and
Melissa.
I just want to remind everybody that, you know, they rejected this this attempt by the delegates to stand by Julian Assange and free Assange. It's not very popular, actually, if you're a progressive in California to talk about free Julian Assange, to talk about imperialism. It really isn't. And there is a small sector of like these people that actually do talk about it. But it is a vast majority of them, like, you know, they bring up this bullshit. And this is exactly what it's going to lead into the next section. This next part of this Assange section is that there are these same idiots that, you know, that just completely believe these smears by Julian Assange, who has been freed of all those charges of rape that were used, right, that were used to detain him and get him to say, oh, he was avoiding bail and he was doing this and he was that. And we're also used in the whole situation to politicize his ideology, to try to frame him as some sort of, you know, Trump-supporting libertarian that helped Trump defeat Hillary Clinton. It's completely, even if all of that were true, the fact is he is being prosecuted for the wrong thing. Journalism is not a crime, right? War crimes are. The wrong person is in jail. Misty constantly puts out these tweets about how all these warmongers are receiving, you know, they're free, but they're also receiving all of these awards. And then you have a journalist in jail for exposing them. It just kind of shows you the state of the world that we live in. And we say it all the time, but I don't think it sticks in people's heads. Like, we have a literal journalist in jail, and we have warmongers winning awards, getting rich, because that is what the system values. That is what the system upholds. And it's disgusting.
And the fact that people get mad about the whole Julian Assange situation, they say, well, he helped Trump win by exposing the Democratic Party lies and what they were doing. Rather than people getting really mad and walking away from the Democratic Party for what they did for Bernie Sanders being a cuck, not walking away himself, that's what really just infuriates me. If the truth blows it up, then so be it. We have the right to know the truth. So the fact that people were upset that he didn't hold back the truth because it supposedly helped Donald Trump, and that's why they're mad at him, that's a demented kind of fucking thinking you got up there, and you really need to steer it on straight.
Well, because they go by ideology first, right?
Team sports, right?
So if they pick their team, then that means everything the other side says is bad. They think in binaries. They do not understand nuance. They don't understand that the world does not reflect, like, they think that the rest of the world, right, in the global south, all is, and even in Europe, is left, right, Nazi, anti-Nazi. Like, it does not fit like that. I'm so sorry. Grow the fuck up. Really.
Wow.
Put on your big boy pants and grow the fuck up. And one of the people that needs to grow the fuck up, and we literally don't talk about this person ever because I don't consider this person relevant in terms of actual news. It's Hasan Piker, and Jonny was like, no, we gotta cover this one. So I want to hear what Jonny has to say. But he literally is, you know, one of these people that makes money off of, like Steve said it, of 16-year-olds who tip him with their parents' money, because that's what the Twitch audience is majorly. It's a lot of really young people that, you know, are easily being influenced by people who call themselves socialists, but are really some of the most capitalist CIA bots. I mean, you can look at Vaush, and again, another one we don't really talk about, and how they push this, you know, woke imperialism is what I want to call it. Like this sort of thing that's just like, it's not based on reality. It is just complete taking some sort of supposed Marxist theory and making it into this social, quasi-socialist, liberal bullshit that it isn't rooted in anything that is people working class based, right?
Yeah.
And Jonny has up this tweet right here. All the people who did not support Julian Assange or spread misinformation about him. It's all the names that you see, right?
AOC, Chen Kuger, Emma, Anna, Sam, Vaush, Namiki, Hassan, Benjamin,
and all these
David
people
Dole.
Focus so much on fucking Jimmy Dore or on calling everybody anti-vaxxers. And it's just so stupid, and we don't want to waste our time. But the reason we're bringing up Hasan Piker is because this whole thing is being used against all of us now. The painting, the smearing of people who are covering the mandates, who are covering COVID, who are covering imperialism as it is, and who are actually doing the work are being smeared as fascists, as Nazis, as white supremacists, as red, brown, as you name it, right? It's the same fucking rhetoric.
Hassan would kind of mention me in a way, unless there was somebody else that I didn't catch, about, there were anti-vaxxers who wanted to speak at the Medicare for All march.
Oh, yeah, they were talking about me, too.
You know,
somehow. No, and they lie, and they say that I was speaking about anti-vax stuff at the Medicare for All march. I
We
never
have names,
mentioned
Hassan.
anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mentioned? I mentioned Julian Assange, and apparently that pissed people off that I mentioned Julian Assange at a progressive march for Medicare for All. If you don't understand that every fucking issue that we want is tied to us having the ability to speak out and have dissent, you are a fucking moron. Because you should be proud that people
Or they're
are
getting
speaking
paid
about
to
this.
to have that rhetoric, fam. We don't know if they're a moron or if they're getting paid a certain
Well,
way. Everybody has
yeah.
a price, fam, and these people got a lot of money all of a sudden out of the blue. And it's
Yeah.
not where they got the money from sometimes, it's who's paying them that we should be paying attention to as well. A la his uncle, where they got their cash from two different bad sources.
Right. And then, you know, Amazon and like all these people. I mean, it's just really sad. I mean, the guy buys... They talk about Jimmy Dore having a $1 million house, right?
Yeah.
Jimmy Dore is supported by people who are like working class, a lot of people who like donate his money. The Sam Cedars of the world, the MSNBC folks, the TYT folks are not supported by that money. They're supported by fucking like investors and like fucking pure media, like, and all of these people who literally like just have big money and basically tell them the angle that they need to cover something, which is why you see a bunch of Trump videos still on TYT.
Yeah.
Trump hasn't been in office. Like, shut the fuck up about Trump. So let's just hear.
But we also know too as well what Addy said. They make it almost impossible to exist outside that realm over there, right? Outside the mainstream. Unless you're getting a check from them, they're going to make it very, very hard. You saw what Addy's going through. We talk about what we're going through. So you can see how they can kind of funnel it down to the people they want to speak their language. So here's the video.
Bro, why are you not mentioning hero Julian Assange being extradited? What the fuck is wrong with you? Assange stands on the internet are some of the most psychotic weirdos that it's just like, just stop, okay? Just be normal. Just stop. Do your fucking weird thing at the Jimmy Dore stream, okay? This is not the Jimmy Dore stream. We do a bunch of different content here. Go hang out with like weirdo fucking fascists, okay? Bro, why are you not mentioning hero Julian Assange being extradited? What the fuck is wrong with you? Assange stands on the internet are some of the most psychotic weirdos that it's just like, just stop, okay? Just be normal. Just stop. Do your fucking weird thing at the Jimmy Dore stream, okay? This is not the Jimmy Dore stream. We do a bunch of different content here. Go hang out with like weirdo fucking fascists, okay?
Who's a weirdo fascist?
That's the thing.
Who's a weirdo fascist?
So you see the downward. This is what they do. They literally accuse and smear people just blatantly because they know that it's so hard to like say, oh hey, I'm being smeared. Like, so now the Assange activist, any Assange supporter, is a weirdo fascist. They're weirdos. They're
Be
like
normal, fam.
They're not normal. But there's no evidence, there's no like data provided like, oh, they did this and this and that. It's just like, oh, it's now cool to hate on Assange if you're on the left because, you know, I saw somebody say, I don't care about Assange because people of color are behind bars and blah, 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 blah. Like, it's just like that whole like virtue signaling, like, oh, I'm like, you know, this person and I only care about this. No, like we said already, like he represents imperialism. Imperialism is a racist thing, but fine. Like, but there's no like, oh, this is why Assange activists are this way. There's nothing, there hasn't been anything, by the way, from this guy in support of Assange. In like, besides when he got called out, right? Like there hasn't been an attempt to really talk about the importance. Because if I were, if I wanted to be a journalist, if I wanted to be a commentator, if I wanted to be taken seriously as one, like he has his little platform, I would be like, you know what? I don't have to agree with the politics, even if you say that, right? I don't necessarily have to, it's not about Assange the person, it's about what he represents as being a journalist that is being jailed, and this is imperative for our freedom. I would even accept that. But like, there's been none of that. It's been like the whole smearing that TYT did, the whole, bullshit, Russia, tying him to Russia and Putin and all that bullshit. There's never been some sort of apology on that, no form of actual retraction. They just kind of pretend it didn't happen. And so it's just like when you smear people who support free speech, who support truth, who are truth tellers as fascists, just because you don't like Jimmy Dore, like Jimmy Dore is like one person talking about Assange. There are so many people that have been talking about Assange, so many activists that have been talking
I think he knows who he's talking about. I think he knows who he's talking about, fam.
He's talking about Action for Assange. He's talking about Misty. He's talking
about
all
Jack
these people.
and he's talking about all of our crew, and we know. Who
But
he's
like
talking
how? But what? The ability of the boutique left, the pseudo left, the emotional left, as Jonny calls them, to just call anybody they disagree with a fascist is a problem, because now you have idiots calling people like Niko and myself a Nazi for sharing one fucking video from a right-wing party in Germany, where the people are to the left of the vast majority of the politicians you have here in America. But you don't, and they don't hear the message. They just, oh, that's a fascist, and they don't think. There's no reasoning. There's no logic. There's just brain melting in front of you and a temper tantrum happening before you. There's nothing. You can't reason with these people.
Let's talk about this next one. I had enough talking about this jerk off, because that's all he is a little jerk off. I swear to God.
And I just exposing these, these fake socialists. I just wanted to remind people who the CPUSA is, because when I saw them, and when they say they didn't endorse Biden, but they were advocating for people to vote for him against Trump. They didn't advocate for a third party. They've been going after Caleb Maupin, calling him a Trump supporter. This is what they do. This is, again, the same shit these people do. I said, reminder to all that CPUSA claims they didn't endorse Biden, but they encourage people to vote for him against Trump instead of a third party. They also gloated when he won and pushed vapid identity politics about Kamala the cop Harris. And I said, they're not communists. This is what irritates me. These people push people to the right. These people push people away from any sort of anti-imperialism. Look, this is what they wrote back then, November 19th of 2020. I will always remember the spontaneous celebration of joy and relief in the streets across the country when it was announced that Biden reached 270. The dancing and tears came out of the passionate work going on for months against all odds in the middle of the pandemic, overcoming voter suppression and disinformation for Black, Latinx. We don't fucking use that word. Stop using that word. Native and Asian Pacific communities to speak with the people about the stakes for their lives and the need for their vote, helping with the absentee ballots, or rides to the polls. It reflected deep pride in electing the first Black and South Asian woman as vice president, Kamala Harris, daughter of immigrants. We did this, was the refrain. The vote was a collective expression of working class power and an important experience for bringing forward new working class leaders. This is a fucking psyop. Yeah. This is a fucking CIA cutout used to fucking get these young kids to think that they're being communist, but to actually play into the State Department talking points. This is dangerous because kids are like, oh wow, and then they think it's the same thing Vaush does, the same thing Hassan Piker does. They wrap their little imperialist State Department talking points in woke language that isn't really rooted in anti-imperialism. That is dangerous because those are exactly the entities that are used to have this, well, you say cultural Marxism, I say just fucking pseudo bullshit.
Well, that's what they talked about. The cultural Marxism is something like a CIA plant that's used to divide people right now. Play the cultural wars, play the identity, split the people within inside, and that's what they're doing. Everything right, that sentence right over there. They're not real communists whatsoever. We can tell you when you go down to the global south and you talk to socialists or whatnot, they're not about all this little bourgeois bullshit over here. They're about economics.
How do they talk about Biden and the West? And the Sandinistas, they don't fucking say Kamala Harris is the first. No, they're like Yankee, afuera.
Get out of here.
Afuera. You don't have anything to say about our country. But that's.
But we know at the border, though, that they were really happy that when Obama gassed them versus Biden, Trump gassing them, they were being gassed by the lesser of two evils, fam. That is important over there, and I think that's what they say all the time.
And I just want to read, Jonny, the second part of my tweet. If you go to the LOL part, I said, this is what they posted. Let's ask ourselves, if it does come down to Biden versus Trump, who would be more likely to forget student debt, expand health care, protect immigrant families, and take actions to mitigate the climate crisis? Who are we more likely to convince to shift their decisions in more progressive direction? Who would our Cuban, Venezuelan, and Nicaraguan comrades prefer to see in the White House? Considering the U.S. imperialist blockade loosened up during the Obama administration, our short-term tactics and strategy are not limited to voting for the lesser of two evils. Since at the end of the day, we are building a mass movement for socialism, and that means we must continue to push for unity, organization, radicalization around the issues, and not around bourgeoisie politicians. The youth must play an essential role in the struggle so that the socialist movement will continue to live on. We will define the struggle and the socialist moment we shall overcome. I mean, this is fucking bullshit. Okay, student debt, Biden, nope, none of that. Expand healthcare, definitely no.
Nope.
Protect immigrant families,
Nope.
oh, influx facilities, that's
Yep.
a lot of protection. Climate crisis, I will not ban fracking. He's standing by his decision.
More drilling fucking permits on public lands than fucking Trump now.
Sanctioning Cuba, Venezuela, not recognizing
Nicaragua.
Do not speak for fucking Nicaraguans. Your bourgeois politics. Fucking Nicaragua. Are you kidding me? They're sanctioning Nicaragua right now. They won't even let the politicians come into this country.
Yeah.
And you're going to tell me that Biden is better? How the hell would you know? You fucking live in this Western society where you have no idea. And you're pushing this liberal bullshit as communism. Nothing makes me more angry than these fake ass leftists. You know why they're worse than the Republicans? Because they trick people. I know what a Republican stands for. I see them. They're honest about not wanting immigrants to come in. They're honest about where they stand on abortion. But you talk about these faux leftists, they are doing the CIA's work to stop any sort of revolution from happening. That is why I hate them more.
Yeah, this is not what this movement's supposed to be about. This movement's been co-opted for a long time ago. I mean, we weren't around by the time this movement was co-opted. People talk about the communists that were in this country for a long time. It was all a part of a labor movement. It was about labor. Now it's just bourgeois politics. As they're saying, don't buy into bourgeois politics. They are actually promoting bourgeois politics and bullshit.
Disgusting.
And all those lists of things that they talked about, they got nothing from Biden. In fact, the imperialism is kind of worse. We talked about the Ukraine situation today. I was amped up when Victoria Nuland and Blinken and all these people, Jake Sullivan, got back into office, whatnot, behind the Biden State Department. These are the same kind of people as before, and it's kind of worse because they act as if they're your friends, whatnot. That whole image that they painted, and yet they're the devil in disguise. You're inviting them into your house. And that's the sad thing about this whole situation.
Anything to say? Okay. All right. So, guys, this is the time where we have to go to Rokfin only. They're absolutely will take us down if we stay because Twitter is now doing the same. So we're not allowed to say this. You know, we went to Jimmy's show.
Yeah.
He kind of alluded to sitting down with the YouTube. They know that what we're saying is the science. but we're not allowed to talk about it. And so we're going to go and go on Rokfin only. So if you guys see the link, let's see if we can put the link on
the link
YouTube.
is up there.
Okay, great. So we're going to go on Rokfin only to just discuss this and whatever else and just finish up the show.
I'm going to read the super raise as we're here. And as soon as we're done with the super raise, we'll be on out because Black of the Empire is here. He said, wow, actually caught you on live.
We love it when you catch us live.
I know, right? Well, Daryl and Dontel, those are our two peeps. When you catch us live, we love it. Catching Dontel's show late at night was amazing, too, as well. We're talking about music, sending him some MF Doom and stuff. Canadian refugee. The Nuremberg trials were almost as trial as the Maxwells. Only 23 were convicted, and hundreds of scientists given asylum in the West to continue their research in chemical and bioweapons. Same with many enforcers. World War II never really ended, and that's from the Canadian refugee. It's so true. They had the Nazi draft where a lot of people, Operation Paperclip, came on over, and they were guilty of killing Jews all the time, starving them out, doing tests on them, whatnot, and they were granted asylum. 23 Nazis were used as patsies. This is the same thing what's going on right now. Just patsies right now. We'll never get to the truth of what happened. The people who are guilty in the Epstein situation will never, ever pay a price.
The Nazis went into our State Department, the National Security State, and they also went into Latin
NASA
America and hid there as well. So it's just,
Thank you for, this is for Laura Genovese.
Laura.
Paisano. What's up, Laura? Thank you for bravely reporting on issues that matter. Hashtag Save Assange. By the way, how horrible that journals like you are getting smeared when you speak so mindfully and truthfully for the good of us all. And that is the truth. That's what they want us to do. They want to keep everybody under their thumb. They want to keep everybody hypnotized. They want to keep their narrative out there. They want to keep people pitted against each other. You see it every day when you watch TV. If you do watch TV, the advertising, the corporations, they're the ones running this place over here, fam. And they don't want to lose control of that. So I feel like they're having
And they are losing the narrative. That's the thing. That's the thing we need to remember. They're actually losing the narrative.
Yeah. And the last one for today right now, before we go to Rokfin only, Teresa Aland. Thank you so much for the Super 8 contribution. It is always Appreciate it on the couch.
She did that on purpose.
Yes, Marlene Smith, nuance equals Nazis, fam. Come on now. Jeez, and anyone that is still defending Assange and what the fuck he said about Assange supporters, please know how any true supporter of Assange would state Assange shouldn't be jailed at all. Unlike Assange stating that he didn't believe Assange should be jailed forever.
Oh my God.
Okay? Assange supporters wouldn't call Assange supporters fascist either. Pulling the whole Bernie bro narrative is just gross. And that's from Marlene
Exactly
Smith.
what it is. And those Bernie bros did exist, and they still do exist, and they've been existing, unfortunately. So, guys, thank you, Marlene. Thank you, everybody. We love you guys on YouTube. Please come to Rokfin. It's not going to be a long section, but it'll be worth talking about this right now.
Because we do have to have some conversations about that, too, as well. And get on over there. We had almost 200 people still left on YouTube. Get on over to Rokfin now. Now is the time. We love you. We have about 180 people and climbing on Rokfin. So let's get to 200, guys. We're getting out of YouTube in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fam.